In the previous lesson, we finished up by talking about how this can very quickly get messy. We create a person, then a view, then another person, then another view, and now there isn't any real connection between all of our person views outside of maybe creating an array containing each of them. Well, that's sort of what we're going to do. But to take advantage of some of the pub/sub abilities, not to mention some other things that Backbone provides, instead of using a simple array, we're going to use a Backbone collection. And this is something you'll get into the habit of. For some feature, it may have a model. So we have our person. Well, we have our person model. We have the representation, the view for one person. And now we need to have a collection for people. So let's do that right now. We have our model. And if it helps you, you could say person model. And we'll say the view for a person. And now let's say a list of people. That's going to be our collection. So var people collection equals backbone.collection.extend. Now the main thing that this needs to receive is it needs to know what sort of model are we dealing with. Now one thing that may trip you up is notice that when we created our new view, we did this similar thing. We passed in the name of our model. But notice we passed in the instance of the model. But in the case of our collection, it doesn't want an instance. It wants to know what type of model are we working with? What's the data type? Well, in this case, the model will be person. So we're referencing this specifically rather than the instance of a model. And that's important to remember. So let's leave it like that and check this out. Now we have a place to store a collection of people. So if we run this new people collection, we get this, and let's see what we have available. All right, so now we can see it has a CID and by ID. What are those? Well, your models can have IDs or CIDs if they haven't actually been persisted. Don't worry about that. We'll discuss that more. We have a length, and that's going to be the number of models contained within it. We still have access to lots of underscore helper functions like fetch and invoke and include, lots of fun stuff. And then we have this container for all of the models. So let's see how we can work with this. Well, now that we have our collection, now I will create our collection, var people collection. By the way, notice I'm still using all global variables. Don't worry about any of that right now. We're only doing that so I can easily switch over to Chrome Developer Tools. In a future lesson, we're going to talk about namespacing so that we don't have all of these globals hanging around, which is a terrible idea. So we'll create a new instance of our people collection. And now I will say people collection.add. We're going to add a new model to this collection, person. And now why don't we get rid of that second instance, and from the editor, we will console.log people collection and see what we're working with here. I reload the page, and now if we open it up, notice that the length is 1 because we have one model, and we have one model contained within it. Now if I were to say people collection.toJSON, we have that same thing. What that's going to do is give us a representation of all of the objects. So let's backtrack just a couple steps and return the other option here. And now once again, people collection.add person2. Now once again, console.log people collection. Reload the page. Now it has a length of 2. There's 2 models in it. And if we run people collection.toJSON, we're going to have a list or an array of objects. There's our first one, and there's our second one. So now we have sort of this array on steroids where it can make announcements, it can listen for specific events and respond accordingly. Now, to finish up this lesson, let's see how we can clean this up. Why don't we begin, we'll get rid of the console.log, and now we're going to say new people collection, and what we're going to do is we're going to pass an array to it. So notice that what we did before is we created a model, and then we added that model to the collection. But there's another way we can do this as well. We can pass individual objects that represent the models. So for example, if I were to say name is Jeffrey Way, age is 27, and then let's do another one. Name is John Doe, age is 50, and he is a web designer. And let's do one more. Name is Sally Doe. She is 29, and her occupation is graphic designer. So now notice what we're doing is we're passing an array to people collection, and it's just a list of objects here. But what I want you to see is if we get rid of all of this, and let's get rid of the person view as well. Now we just have a single list of people, And if I console.log people collection, reload the page, notice that we're getting the exact same effect. And this is something that confused me at first, but now I really love it. So now the exact same thing, people collection.toJSON, and once again, we have an array of those objects. But what's most important is that these aren't just objects, these are actual models. Behind the scenes, Backbone knows that we specified when we created our collection that the associated model is a person. So then when we pass to this array of objects, Backbone knows, okay, these should be models, and the model type is going to be person. So now we can do things like var model equals people collection, and we'll say @0. If I run model, now we return to the first model at the 0 index. We set attributes. You can see, yep, we have Jeffrey Way, age 27, and the job is worker, which is the 0 index. So then at that point, we can say model.getName. We interact with it just like we would with any other model. Model.set occupation web developer. And now model.toJSON, and now we have updated that. If we run people collection.toJSON, that has now been updated within the collection as well. So now we know we have a much cleaner way to store our models. And in this case, we're just hard coding it in. But as you can imagine, in your project, you would probably be using some of Backbone's Ajax functionality so that you can pull in your data. So if you store your people on your server in a database, you can then run an Ajax request to fetch the necessary JSON and then dynamically add it to your people collection. In this case, though, we're just manually doing it, which is okay for now. So now we have our collection of people. This is really good. Each model within our collection is of the person type, so we can interact with it in that way. And if we need to do additional things, additional actions on a person, for example, maybe you have a first name and a last name, and you want to have a method for full name. You can do all of that here. Return this.get first name, a space. You've seen this many times. Now you have a new method, and you can interact with it in the same way that you would with any other method on your model. But I'm going to backtrack just a few clicks. We don't need that. What I want you to think about now, moving into the next lesson, is, okay, we had this collection of people, but we only have a view for a single person. So where would we write the functionality that filters through all of the people in our collection and then displays them on the page? And in those cases, it's helpful to use a collection view, a view that is responsible for rendering a collection of items or smaller views. Stay tuned.